A BB40 and straight black pride brothers and sisters. This is your brother, DC Radical 1, with another episode of DC's Radical Thoughts. And I hope you all really enjoyed these. I said I would record a set of them. I didn't know how many before I released them. This is going to be episode 10, and I think I'm going to call this one Prosperity Consciousness. And it's going to be interesting to see what type of feedback that I get from this. But the other day I was rewatching Baba Kwame Ture, the ancestor, as he was discussing making the unconscious conscious. And this is the lecture where he talks about the difference between organization and mobilization. And I've always found that section of the speech just so profound, because and he says that, a direct quote he says is that much confusion is to be found in these two concepts, and when he talked about organization and mobilization. He talks about how King was a great mobilizer. Martin Luther King was a great mobilizer, but was not a great organizer. And he said that Malcolm X was a great mobilizer, and he was a great organizer. And there are different ways to go about both of those things, and I would say that in the modern context, we've been largely reduced to mobilization as opposed to organization. And to be honest, you can't make any real change based on simply on mobilization. Any type of change, any type of uplift, any type of improvement, like you can't even really make serious reform in a society without organization. Like, you can't do anything of value based strictly on mobilization. And to a large degree, that's what black people have been reduced to. We've been reduced to mobilization. They even talk about, the integrationist Negroes even talk about voter turnout and mobilizing the vote. They don't talk about organizing the vote. They talk about mobilizing the vote. And so there's another thing that he said in this lecture, and I just was like, this is a must watch for anyone who thinks that they're gonna organize anything or change anything or do anything of value for not even just for black people. This thing is so valuable that if you're just random white person who thinks that they need to change whatever, they can learn from it. Random Chinese person, any people in any society that look at their society and see, something needs to change, much valuable insight would be gained from watching this lecture. It was a little more than an hour, but one of the things that it made me think about as I looked at today's landscape, because the lecture is it's over 30 years old, is that I think what I'm starting to see is the rise of what I call prosperity consciousness. Now, what am I talking about? Well, when I look at the FBA and ADOS movements and their focus on reparations is striking me very much like when the churches went from preaching the old time, what they used to call it, fire and brimstone, 10 commandments, you don't do this, you're going to hell type of thing, to the prosperity gospel with Joel Osteen and these other people, and talking about, God wants you to be happy, and God wants you to be rich, and God wants you to be healthy, and he wants to give you all these things, and blah blah blah. And so basically, the rise of that type of Christianity was a melding of capitalism, materialism, and Christianity in a new form. And so what I'm kind of looking at, and I could be wrong, I actually kind of hope I'm wrong, but it appears that the new, well, not the new, but the new focus of these groups, the FBA, the ADOS, and these types of people, their focus on reparations and their interjection into the reparations movement. And even seeing people like Boyce Watkins, talking about it, which is not, I'm not saying that he doesn't have the right to, because he's a finance person. So realistically, he does. I mean, it lies somewhat within his area of expertise. But what looking at the lay person and seeing people's tweets and hearing people, their opinions, there is very much not based in any historical understanding of how long people have been talking about it. Like, for example, not one time have I ever heard anyone talk about Queen Mother Moore as being, in essence, from what I can see, and if there's someone before her as far as the 20th century goes, then y'all let me know. But Queen Mother Moore has been talking about reparations. I have video of her in the 70s, and she said she started organizing around it and went to the UN in the 50s. And I don't hear anyone mention Queen Mother Moore as the mother of the reparations movement, if you will. I remember interacting via the internet with a dude about in Cobra, and he was just like, man, they ain't doing nothing, blah 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 blah, this and that, dismissing the work they had put in. Now, have they been effective? Obviously not. We don't have reparations. But can I say that they haven't put forth any effort or haven't done any work? No, I can't say that, because they started probably around the time I first read the autobiography of Malcolm X, is when they began organizing. Now, if you've been organizing and you've been going about it for 35 years and haven't achieved the goal, is it possible that you've been going about it the wrong way? Absolutely. Does that mean that you haven't put forth maximum effort? Not particularly. We've had people talking about fighting against crime and drugs in the black community since the 80s. It's 2024. Crime and drugs are still a problem in the black community. Does that mean that those people who have worked on that issue since then haven't put forth maximum effort? Absolutely not. We got people here in the DMV area have been working with the youth and fighting against crime and drugs since I was the youth. I'm not going to say that they aren't doing whatever they can, because I know they are doing whatever they can. So for people to act as if no one has fought for reparations before them, and that they that now that they're aware of reparations, now that they Now they interjected themselves into the issue to act as if all of a sudden, white people are going to have a change of heart and just fork over, forget billions. They literally, the United States government would literally owe us trillions of dollars. To act as if that is going to happen, as if it's imminent, is literally to me, from my perspective, is literally the same thing as prosperity gospel. It's literally the same thing of Joel Osteen talking about how God wants you to be rich and this and this and that. And I mean, it's the same thing. Like when I listen to people talk, I don't hear any plan of action of how they're going to get a government which last time I looked up was at least $30 trillion in debt already and fighting 2 wars. In essence, 2 proxy wars at this point. One of them which they're losing. And again, $30 trillion in debt. And they're bringing in illegal immigrants to offset the voting power of black people. So at this point, you can't even the power of your vote is being lessened literally every minute as they start talking about giving these illegal immigrants the right to vote and all this stuff. And so when I hear people talk about the reparations thing as if, well, we're gonna know what people say, no check, no vote, and cut the check and all that. Man, those sayings and those slogans and stuff are cute, but I haven't seen not one. And if I'm just ignorant to it, hey, if somebody hears this and they like, man, this dude don't know what he's talking about, hey, give me the link to the plan. I have seen nor heard no plan of action of actuating reparations. I have seen and heard no plan about any type of economic program to implement reparations to the benefit of the community. I have seen and heard no coherent step-by-step alternative. I haven't seen a deadline put forward as if we don't get it by 2040 or whatever year, we're going to do X, Y, Z. I haven't seen any plan or heard about any plan put before former President Trump and put before current President Biden and the other candidates who are currently running, because this is an election year. We are officially in an election year now. I haven't seen or heard any type of coherent plan dealing with any aspects of the reparations discussion. And I'm going to definitely do a Center Live show on reparations where I get more into the weeds as far as the math and what I think in general we're owed and how to go about it and who are all the people that should be involved. And it's not just the federal government and all those things. I will do that at a different time. But for right now, from my perspective of what I've seen and the condition of our community and the lack of any type of organizational infrastructure to implement this, implement any monies. Let's just say it magically happened because Biden wanted to win the election. He's like, all right, it's $2 trillion. You know what I'm saying? Giving out over 10 years or whatever. I haven't seen it. We don't even have a council of people to distribute it that we know are loyal to black people. Like we're not prepared in any way, shape, form, or fashion that I can see to to do anything beneficial with any money that we receive that would benefit the black community. Like, it would literally be like that Dave Chappelle skit where people get money and they go buy alcohol and drugs and cars and whatever. And in essence, being completely honest, in our current state, the money would be back in the hands of the Europeans and especially the small hats before the check cleared. Like, the money would be back in their hands almost before we got it, and we would have built very little infrastructure, and the benefits would not go beyond this current generation because we haven't prepared ourselves for it. We haven't. And again, this goes back to that foundational concept of organization versus mobilization. We don't have the business infrastructure right now to even turn over our dollar currently, one time in the black community. That we don't have the people who have access to capital are not utilizing it in a way to help entrepreneurs to expand their businesses, to make sure that their businesses last long enough and to be able to grow and develop. I mean, this is a lot of work that needs to be done in addition to coming up with a sound stratagem of whether it's a legal strategy, whether it's an economic strategy, whether it's a voting strategy, whether it's a insurrectionist strategy, like whatever it is. And from my perspective, you're probably gonna need to do it's probably gonna take all of that in order to attempt to get reparations that are owed to black people. Now, let's make no mistake. I'm not saying that we aren't owed it. They can't pay us what they owe us because they owe us their existence, right? And as Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad said, it's not just money. Like, and that reminds me, that's a whole nother discussion. Are we just talking about money? What's the state of the dollar? With the massive inflation that we've seen, do we want to just take money? Do we want land? Do we want, gold and something more precious? Or we want land that has oil or gas? There is so much to the reparations discussion and so much depth to it that I never hear from these people who now act as if they're the originators of the conversation and now act as if they are the heads of the conversation and now act as if they have some type of plan that's going to just make Europeans and small hats, because these are the people that are in control. The small hats in control of the Federal Reserve. Okay, small hats in control of the Treasury. To a large degree, the small hats make everyone sign a pledge to support Israel. So in essence, the small hats in control of Congress, right? Which means, in essence, and the president of the United States has avowed that he's an avowed Zionist. He never said that he's avowed that he's pro-black. He said he's an avowed Zionist. So if you think that you're going to get an avowed Zionist and a Congress that has pledged allegiance to the Zionist state of Israel to give monies to black people, when if we started looking at it and we started calculating and we started talking about who's responsible for what, there's a lot of Zionists who had a hand in the slave trade, if you think that's just going to happen out the clear blue sky, hey man, I don't know what to tell you other than you are sadly mistaken. And you've been sold a bill of goods, and anybody who's out here trying to tell our people this stuff without some type of coherent plan of, one, how to achieve the objective, and two, how to administrate it once the objective is achieved, anybody that's selling our people this stuff is a flim flam man. They're a con artist. They are they a rip off artist. They are a charlatan, a fraud. You see what I'm saying? Like, we got to be completely honest here. This is just, people been sold a bill of goods. And I don't know if it's some feel good stuff. Like, that's why I compare it to the prosperity gospel. That's why I call it prosperity consciousness. Because to me, it's the same. It's coming in the same vein and the same spirit, and the selling people on the possibility of something good happening, but with no means or methodology of making it take place. No real plan to make it take place. And as I look at it and I listen to people and I thought about it, and I'm just like, wait a minute. Let's really take a look at this. Let's think about it. And once I started, listening to people and thinking about it and listening to it, I'm like, hold up. This is a flim flam. Like, I've even seen some FBA people claim that Africans and other black immigrants are stopping us from getting reparations or whatever. And I'm just like, before these people came here, we weren't making no progress getting reparations. So how in the world are they the problem? But the white man is not the problem. But the small hat's not the problem. It's not the small hat's fault. The small hat is not stopping us from getting reparations. The Europeans not stopping us from getting reparations. But some random African who express whatever idea they express, and they're not even relevant nor in control of anything. They're not even in control of anything in Africa. They're not in control of anything in Nigeria. They're not in control of anything in Ghana. So how in the world are they over here? They're going to come over here and stop us from doing anything. It's a ridiculous concept. And yet I see people making these arguments and saying these things, and I'm looking around. I'm trying to figure out what is going on. And to me, it's just more Negroes scared to challenge and talk about the white man. Like, if you're gonna be mad, you're gonna talk about it. Either talk about them or talk about the hats or both, because those are people in charge. And to be completely honest, as I said before, the hats are more in charge than anybody else. The hats make people sign a pledge to Israel. The hats make people the hats are in charge of the Federal Reserve. The hats are in charge of the Treasury. They're in charge of the money. They make Congress pledge to protect Israel at all costs. So if you're talking about reparations and you're not talking about what the hats owe, you're not talking about what the hats have done. You're not talking about the hat's hand in our enslavement, the hat's hand in our the character assassination of black people through the media and through Hollywood and the Birth of a Nation film and these other things that the hats had their hand in. Like, if you're not talking about that, but you blaming other people for us not getting reparations and for us not getting our just due, and in fact for us being enslaved, this whole Africans sold Africans and all this, but you ain't talking about what the hats did, and you're not talking about their hand in it and them insuring the ships and making the ships and making money off of everything and getting rich off of it and having their hands in the Arab slave trade and all that. If you're not talking about all that, but you blaming some random African immigrant for us not receiving our just due, you're a Negro, you're a coon, a Sambo, a Mobutu, a clown. It's when I think about it, the more I think about it, the more ridiculous it gets. Is just as bad as the prosperity gospel. It's the same thing. It's the same selling people hopes and dreams in a bill of goods and flim-flamming them so you can get more likes and views on YouTube and whatnot, and get people to donate money to you and whatever else is going on. But you're not coming up with any real plan, any real strategy, any real way to actualize this thing. You sitting around, talking and criticizing people who've been trying to do the work, though they have not been successful, and yet you have no plan other than to beg the white man, which seems to always be the Negro plan. With that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's your brother DC Radical 1, and this has been DC's Radical Thoughts. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cash App is $DC Radical 1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A beat before ODA and straight black pride.